Okay, again, thank you very much. Okay, as Rona said, that I did put a lot of information into this presentation. So just so everybody understands, one thing I try not to do is just read slides. So as she mentioned, the presentation will be available. So if you need to go back and review them, or if I go through some slides too quickly, then you'll have the opportunity to go back and review them. But on some of the slides that there are multiple bullets, I'm only going to pull out the one or two bullets that I think are very important that we do spend a little bit of time talking about. So with that, we can begin. So the objective today is discuss the importance of good planning and scheduling. So my definition of the maintenance function really is to get into the equipment and repair that equipment or maintain that equipment in the shortest period of time at the optimal cost, where it's the least disruptive to production. So that's really what I'm going to try driving home today. How the storeroom, what world-class storeroom operations look like, and how that supports the maintenance function. Some of the fundamental elements of good planning and scheduling, and a couple activities that we could do in the storeroom to show immediate returns. Some refer to that as quick wins. So that's a little bit about what I'd like to get covered today. So one thing that I do like to establish right from the get-go is some of the things that I see traveling around the world in multiple different industries that I work with. So, one of the ways that I try to explain it is no matter what industry that you work in, or no matter what industry that I do work in, at the end of the day, maintenance is maintenance. The act of maintenance is a recurring activity, meaning that we'll be back on that equipment. And again, that frequency could be random. It could be tomorrow. It could be next week. It could be 3 years from now. But the act of maintenance is a recurring activity. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we progress. But suffice to say that I want to make sure that when we write job plans, we do it very well the first time. So here's a couple things with the storerooms. What I'll continually hear is that people go into the storeroom and they take parts out and they don't sign them out. That's just a sense of frustration for everyone, because when technicians or planners go to the storeroom and the CMMS system says that they have a part in there, and they go there and it's not there, it's very easy to point a finger at the storeroom operations. Unless we're looking at RFID, I don't think there's a system out there smart enough to know that somebody went into the storeroom last night and took a part out of there without signing it up. Obsolescence seems to be a big issue. I've never heard a maintenance manager ever tell me or say to me, sure, go ahead and throw it away. It's quite the opposite. Hold on to that because we can change this out, or it's a just-in-case inventory, if you will. Installation of new equipment and how we get the equipment bill of materials loaded up in our CMMS system, how we train our maintenance technicians to do the appropriate PMs and what PDM technologies that we should be applying. I don't see a formalized process to put that in place, nor do I see formalized processes put in place for any changes to equipment that's being done. But really, at the end of the day, it comes down to communication. Okay, or lack of, if you will. Here's a couple statistics based on some assessments that we've done over the years. That 25% of maintenance storerooms have standard operating procedures. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll put either temps in storerooms, or we'll put some of the seasoned, grizzled veterans who are in the twilight of their career in a storeroom, but they haven't been formally trained on exactly what they do in storerooms. You see the next bullet there, 10 to 15% of storerooms actually have a budget for eliminating obsolescence. and the last bullet there, the quickest person, the quickest organization that can hurt us is our suppliers. So they need to know what the score of the game is as well. So I absolutely wanted to rate our suppliers and tell them how they're doing. Less than 50% of parts in a storeroom are turned in a 12-month period. Of a typical storeroom inventory, 58% of that inventory we haven't touched in over 3 years, and not to say that that's obsolete materials, but that's the majority of our inventory we haven't touched in over 3 years. And of the good material, the things that we are turning over, 60% of that inventory is considered excess or above the max levels if you're determining min-max levels. So the other thing that I never hear when I go into an organization is, thank goodness, Andy, you're here because our storeroom is way too big. It's typically, quite honestly, the other way. We don't have enough space in our storeroom. So if I give you more space, then human nature is you're just going to fill it up. Okay, so that's what that bullet is talking about. Less than 40% of storeroom operations are staging and picking their work orders effectively, and we're going to spend a little bit more time in detail on the kitting process as well. And then finally, our maintenance planners, 40 to 50% of maintenance planners fail to use past history to plan for future maintenance requirements, which that's a little bit shocking because good maintenance planners should be tracking recurring failures. In the industry, we call those bad actors. So how do we identify those and how do we eliminate those failures from even occurring? So here's a couple things. So that's some of the things that I see out there in multiple industries. So what do some of the best organizations look like? So what are some of the world-class concepts of what good maintenance planning and good storerooms look like? So this bullet right here, every one of the organizations out there is under increasing pressure to improve. I have never been in a company, whether I worked for or that I've worked with, that I hear senior management say, okay, everybody, for the year 2013, let's strive for mediocrity. I've never heard that. It's always improve, reduce, and get better. So that's not going away. So whatever your pressure, internal or external pressure is, it's a reality. It's your reality. So there's a couple different studies out there that show what some of these best operating companies are doing to achieve world class. And the first study was the A.T. Kearney. That's the mother of all studies. This number has actually increased, but they measure and calculate many indicators, KPIs, metrics, and here's some of the things related to today's topic that they've measured. So what they found right here on the maintenance side of these world-class organizations is that there's a more proactive approach to maintenance, where 60% of the maintenance activity is actually on the preventive side, rather than, well, there's a quote with a maintenance manager who I once worked with, who was sending one of his maintenance technicians out to do a repair job on a piece of equipment, and the maintenance technician responded that he fixed that equipment yesterday. Why did he need to go back to the equipment today? And what Mr. Brown said was, yesterday you worked on it, today I want you to fix it. So that I thought that was a very prophetic statement that he made, and there's a lot of truth in that as well. So we want to fix things, not just work on it. The capability to plan and schedule the work, where 80% of all the maintenance work was actually pre-planned. We have effective leadership and supervision on the shop floor and on multiple levels of the organization. The appropriate maintenance skill set. What I'm seeing out there is there's a skills gap. There's a large amount of pressure put on organizations because of attrition with the older generation retiring. the talent is not necessarily out there available for us to hire. So we're incumbent internally to establish a very robust training program, particularly with the next generation of maintenance technicians coming in. And then finally having a good storeroom. So we cannot expect to have a world-class maintenance organization that is not supported by a world-class storeroom. What A.T. Kearney found further was that there were no best corporations out there. There were just, the best organizations were just doing the basics very, very well. But even among the best, there was still a 15 to 20% area of opportunity for improvement. So if you look at that last bullet, the top maintenance performance companies requires the overall corporate commitment. Absolutely, positively, that ranks right up there with any company's safety and quality directives. Just a couple other things. The takeaway from this was the decision making is pushed down throughout the organization. There's more worker-directed activities where we're talking about operator care, autonomous care, implementing TPM concepts out there, strong commitment to the training and development. You're going to see this later on, but 74% of equipment failures can be attributed to the operation of the equipment. And when I ask operators were they formally trained on their equipment, their response is yes, which involved OJT, and I was told where the on switch and the off switch were. So that's not a training program for operators. Some additional things, more cross-functional cooperation between maintenance and production, absolutely. The best working organizations out there. It is very difficult to discern who is an operator and who works in maintenance because they're in this together. Operators are our frontline defense to identify potential failures of their equipment. They use their four senses. Just like each of us drive our own cars, we know when something is going on with our car, whether it's pulling to the right or making a new sound. That's exactly what our operators are doing as well. They use their sight, their touch, their hearing. So we're dependent on them to put the proper notifications in the system for us to address that pending failure. The CMMS system is a tool. I have never heard of a computer maintenance management system making organizations reliable, particularly for those of you out there using SAP. But a CMMS system is strictly a tool that we can use to help us achieve a state of reliability. And again, that last bullet right there, we're getting more of the production group, more of the shop floor people involved in the daily activities of maintaining their own equipment. Okay, and a couple things to think about here. These are a couple interesting statistics right here. An average maintenance operation experiences on average 30 to 30% wasted dollars, meaning that they're throwing good maintenance budget dollars at working on the problem and not fixing it. Okay, so again, that's that old adage, you have time to do it over again, but not right the first time. So that's an example right there. If the maintenance budget is $3 million a year, you may potentially be losing $1 million of that by poor maintenance practices. 18% of a typical technician's time is spent looking for parts. Now, I can round up, and I'll go to the next bullet right there. 18% is looking for parts. Now, another 24 to 26% of a typical day is walking to and from the job site. So they don't have the right tools, perhaps. They don't have the right parts. They have the part, they get to the job site, but somebody is taking a component of that part off to do another repair. But I mean, I can round up. I'm very good at rounding up. But those two bullets right there, we can round those things up to say almost 50%, 45, 50% of a typical technician's day is just walking around looking for parts. Now, that is at an incredible cost to the organization. So I just wanted, there's not a company that I work with where the maintenance manager won't tell me, I'll put my group up against anybody else's in the world. Got that. I understand that. But if 50% of my maintenance staff is walking around looking for parts and looking for tools, then that means that 50% of their day is not on the equipment fixing it. So, a couple things. There is no quick fix, and that's what this slide is going to be talking about. There is no quick fix. There is no easy button that we can push and make us reliable by Friday. So there's this awareness. So step one, first admit that our system is broken. So I want to change the system. I want to set people up. I want to set our maintenance and storeroom up to succeed, not to fail. So this slide right there just talks about the maturity model, but it's going to take a fair amount of time to achieve that. This is a different way of looking at that same slide right here. As we become more mature in our proactive maintenance activities, our maintenance cost, if you will, declines. That's that green line. But notice initially there's actually an increase to our maintenance costs. That's because we need to get our equipment back up to some level of health. If you notice the red line, there's our reactive maintenance. That activity or those hours, if our maintenance group comes out, and that actually decreases over the years. So this is just stabilizing our maintenance activities. But again, if you notice the graph there, look at the number of years it takes to achieve that. So this is not going to happen overnight, and that's very important that leadership understands that as well. So when we do achieve that, though, here's a couple interesting statistics. Again, these are averages, so your numbers may vary significantly from what I have up here, but there's some significant impact to the organization here by achieving a level of reliability within the organization. Our repair expenses actually increased 30% on average in the first year and a half, as evidenced with that last graph I showed you. So that's getting out of the, we have time to do it over again, let's fix it right the first time. We are finally addressing our bad actors or our constant failures. We are not necessarily by default overnighting parts into our facility by FedEx because we've stabilized the inventories in our storeroom. So it takes some time, but if you notice, look at the statistics thereafter. Our reactive maintenance expenses declined on average 68% from the reactive environment that we were in, but that occurs in about 2 years or longer. Equipment breakdowns decline 50 to 60%. For those of you out there, there's a metric that we use that's mean time between failures. Equipment downtime declines 60 to 80%. There's another metric we use there. There's mean time to repair. The availability, there's another way to look at that bullet right there. OEE actually increases on average 10 to 20%, and our inventories actually settle down. They actually, through attrition, and just by the nature of the environment that we're in now, actually decline on average 20 to 35%. So we're getting everything in line here. But again, I stress this, it takes time to get there. So, maintenance improvement must start with good maintenance systems and practices and procedures. So these are the 5 fundamental areas that we need to take a look at, is the general practices and procedures, the standard operating procedures for the storeroom, for our maintenance, for our work identification, for our operators. We capture all of our work orders in our CMMS system. So there's our equipment history. No work is completed without a work order. We have a very robust PM and PDM program put in place, and we have a storeroom that assures that we have the right parts at the right time, in the right quantity. thing that I can't stress enough, if you ask me my top 3 elements that you have to have to establish a reliable environment, is having an accurate bill of materials. So it's a list of all the components that make up the piece of equipment. Some of you may know that is multi-level bill of materials or parent-child relationships, but that's all loaded up in our computer system, so we can go back and reference that and improve our efficiency of our planners. This slide right here, I worked many years on the production side of the business, so you would not dream of running a manufacturing operation, any manufacturing operation, without a production schedule and a production bill of materials. There's no difference on the maintenance side. You would not dream of running a maintenance organization without a bill of materials to repair the equipment, or have a schedule put in place where we can execute that work order in the least disruptive time. The goal then of having a accurate bill of materials loaded up in our CMMS system, world-class, is 98%. So a lot of companies I work with do a great job of adding new parts and new materials to the equipment bill of materials, but they do a lousy job of updating and taking off parts that they've altered. So the takeaway from this slide right here is, I mentioned it earlier, what I see in the industry is an aging maintenance group, and over the years they've obtained a lot of tribal knowledge or insider information, if you will, on how to maintain this equipment. So what we need to do is we need to get that information, because as far as I know, we haven't perfected the Vulcan mind melt. So we need to get that information out of their brain matter between their sound receptacles and get those loaded up in our CMMS system. And the tool that we could use to capture that is called a work order. So what percentage, here's the first pop quiz of the day, if you will. What percentage of a typical technician's day is spent searching for parts?
Okay, I'm going to go ahead then and launch the poll, and if all of our attendees would care to cast your vote and let us know what percentage of a technician's day is spent searching based on what you learned from Andy. Is it less than 5%, 10 to 12%, 18 through 21, or greater than 25%? All right, so it looks like we have about 70% of the votes in. So let me give this a couple of more seconds here. And again, this was on an earlier slide that Andy shared. What percentage of a typical technician's day is spent searching for parts? All right. A couple more votes are being cast. Good, that looks like it. So let me close this and share this. So it looks like, Andy, 2% of the people said that it's under 5%. 7% said 10 to 12. 67% said it's 18 through 21. And 24% felt it was greater than 25.
Okay, good. Interesting. For the respondents, it said less than 25, or I'm sorry, less than 5% and greater than 25. It'd be interesting knowing if that's just from your personal experience. So the correct response there was, on average, a typical technician's day would be C, about 18 to 21%. All right, so planning and scheduling. So one of the most effective ways to control costs and improve maintenance productivity is by planning and scheduling. So planning, the allocation of the needed resources, and just to make myself clear, resources are not just materials, but it's also the labor type as well, and anything else, whether that's scaffolding or cranes or whatever. That's all resources part of job planning. Okay. And it's very important they do it in the sequence in which they are needed. So the best planners out there understand that step 1, step 2, step 3, task 1, task 2, task 3, because we can waste a lot of our time if it's not sequenced properly. these are all the things that our maintenance planners are going to rely on. The work order systems, the CMMS system, all of our assets are tagged with equipment identification. Again, a robust predictive and preventive program, and then a good storeroom to support it all. The planning really is the what needs to be done and how is it going to be done. The scheduling really is the when is it going to be done. Right? We'll spend a little bit more time talking about that. Planning does have the most profound effect on timing and effective accomplishment of the maintenance work. I can tell you from my personal experience when I worked in production and when I was a plant manager, if my most critical piece of equipment went down, the first question I was going to ask my maintenance group was how long. So over time, we could start drilling into some more educated guesses on how long that equipment should be expected to be down for. But that last bullet is a very important bullet as well. So for every hour of effective planning, we'll typically return about 3 hours in maintenance labor savings as far as how long it'll take. So we can, again, if you remember what my definition of maintenance was, is getting the equipment repaired as quickly as we can in the shortest period of time that's optimal cost, that's the least disruptive to production. So that's what this slide is talking about. Here's some of the advantages. I'm not, the takeaway from this one is establishing the work priorities, and if you notice the maintenance-induced failures. There's going to be a slide coming up here. So for those familiar with maintenance-induced failures, I think you'll be astounded what the percentage is that maintenance actually induces equipment failures. So now I've hit up on operations and on maintenance groups. So I'm trying not to offend one particular group. Here's why we have some of the maintenance-induced failures. The skill set. If we don't have good job plans, we are dependent on the technician to work off of memory. The manuals may not always be available, so the specifications for that piece of equipment may not be known. And then we don't have good job plans, so we really don't know how to do the repair. So 63% of some of the failures are caused by, well, self-inflicted by maintenance. Okay, and you've heard me say that. So for every hour of planned, pop quiz number 2, for every hour of planned work makes up what in maintenance labor time?
All right, so we're going to launch our next poll question. And Andy is asking, for every hour of planned work makes up what in maintenance labor time? Does it have little impact? Does an hour of planned work make up 1 to 2 hours of maintenance labor time? Or does an hour of planned work make up 3 to 4 hours of maintenance labor time, or more than 5 hours? All right, so we'd like you all to cast your vote. And it looks like we've got about 3/4 of the votes in, so we'll wait maybe 10 more seconds. Again, for every hour of planned work, it makes up what in maintenance labor time? Little, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, or more than 5. Okay, it looks like everyone has cast their votes, so let's go and share the results. So Andy, no one said it has little impact. 10% of the people said 1 to 2 hours. 90% said 3 to 4 hours. No one said more than 5. So those were our answers. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, great. We're going to come back to this. I'm going to show you a spreadsheet that you'll get a copy of, but it'll really drive that point home. You'll see that in just a minute. So here's some of the criteria for job planning right here. Is the quality of work, what's the acceptable quality assurance, quality control level that work can be executed? What's the estimated cost for our budgeting purposes? And what's the performance standard? So that is our estimated times as well. Okay, so in the last bullet there is we have to put metrics in place to measure that. I've mentioned two of them: mean time between failures, mean time to repair. Those are very good metrics right there to understand our planning efficiency and effectiveness. The other one I'll talk about is planned versus actual, which is another very good KPI. Unplanned work is 3 to 4 times more expensive than planned work. And I think everybody online here will understand that when our maintenance strategy is run to failure, there causes a whole bunch of frustration within the organization. There's a lot of what we refer to as false starts, a lot of working on it, not fixing it. Default delivery from UPS or FedEx is overnight. So it is so much more expensive when our maintenance strategy is run to failure versus moving more towards a planned environment. All right, here's an example right here. This is what I was talking about. We strongly recommend that you have a maintenance planner, a full-time maintenance planner on staff, and the reason is they will pay for themselves through the efficiency and the effectiveness of the rest of the group. So there's an example right here. I understand that this is very, very small, but I think let me walk through a little bit about it and you'll understand the power of this spreadsheet right here. The top section, if you will, that's our workforce. So that's sort of the math that comes into it. That's how many people do we have on staff, what's their annual salary, what's the supporting group in the maintenance. That includes our salaries for our storeroom people, any of the maintenance engineers, reliability engineers. That all is thrown into the maintenance budget as well. So if you see one of the lines there says average hourly rate for, at this particular example, was $42.32. That's not exactly how much we pay the maintenance technicians, or that's not exactly the cost to the organization to repair the equipment. If you move down, the uncontrollable losses, there's nothing that we can do about that. That is an example. Each one of these maintenance technicians got 3 weeks vacation. They got 5 days of sick leave. So that available hours comes out of our equation for determining our availability. It's the next section I want you to take a look at if you can see it. Now, the controllable losses. Now, this is a real client, and this is their numbers. These are not my numbers, but rather the client is the one who put these estimated hours in for one single technician in a typical 8-hour day. So personal time, that was a lunch. 30 minutes a day, they have to do that. The problem here is all 22 maintenance technicians took lunch at the exact same time. So good thing equipment doesn't break down between 12 and 12:30, Monday through Friday. The non-authorized breaks, an hour and a half a day, they estimated. That's the smoke breaks or just sitting around the shop or doing that, whatever, an hour and a half a day. Each one of these maintenance technicians did their own planning in writing their job instructions, so they spent about an hour and a half a day looking for materials. All right, so you can go through the whole list there. Now, that is a typical 8-hour day. If you look at their craft utilization or their wrench time, some of you may know it as, at 16% of their day is actually on the equipment doing what, quite honestly, what we're paying them to do. So what does that equate to full-time employees? How many extra people are we carrying because of that efficiency of 16%? That's 7 full-time maintenance technicians that we're carrying to operate at a 16% rate. Now, please don't misunderstand that. I did not write the spreadsheet to say, okay, we got 7 extra heads, so we can get rid of them. That's not the point. What 7 extra full-time employees is, that's the inefficiencies that we've put these good people in, the bad system, if you will. So if you look at what's the cost to the organization for the maintenance here, it's just over $1 million. So there's 2 things that we can do to improve wrench time or efficiency by 50%, and that's plan their work and kit their work. So I could show you this on a different spreadsheet, but when I change those two different variables in the controllable cost, their utilization actually increases to 33%. So significant cost reductions to the organization. Planners, we talk about planners and their time. This is a study, the results of a study. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what my recommendation is that 50% of a maintenance planner's time needs to be out of the office. They cannot be sitting in the maintenance office planning jobs. They need to be scoping the job, visiting the job site, writing the job plans, but 50% of their day needs to get out from behind their computer and go and talk to the operators, go and talk to the maintenance technicians, look at the OEM manuals, and constantly improve job plans. Here's the 8 steps right here for maintenance planning. Okay, review and analyze. There's getting out of the office. That review and analyze the work order, that's reviewing the work request to validate it. Visit the job site, begin scoping out the work, plan that work. What are the available materials for that work order? Complete that work plan, get it in the schedule, and then follow up. So there's where our KPI metrics come in, and then any after-action reviews if we need to do that. I'm not going to go through every one of these bullets right here, but notice though the 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th bullet: facilitate maintenance activity with production. There's a morning meeting that I strongly recommend that that operations and maintenance have. They review all the activities that happened in the last 24 hours. They review all the activities that are going to happen today, and they actually talk a little bit about what's going to happen tomorrow. So everybody is on the same page of exactly what activities are going to be taking place. Okay. So establishing a formal scheduling meeting with our production group. So when we get into the scheduling meetings with our production group, that typically is a weekly meeting. Most common day is on Thursday. We lock in next week's schedule with production. That meeting, we establish the priority with production. But at the end of the day, one of the questions I ask is, who's the owner of the maintenance schedule? And my belief is production owns the maintenance schedule, okay? Because they're the ones who are going to be able to schedule the time to take the equipment down. They're the ones who are going to work with the maintenance group to make sure that we got the resources available to get in there on the day that is scheduled. Again, I'm not going to go through all these bullets right here, but this would be the typical duties of our scheduler. Now, I get asked that very often, is it a planner / scheduler, or is it a planner and another person is a scheduler? The answer to that is it depends on the size of your organization, but it's not uncommon to have planners / schedulers do dual roles. The larger organizations, it is not uncommon to have a planning group and then there's a scheduling group. Here's our operations. This won't work unless operations is on board with all this. So operations has a responsibility with the maintenance group as well. So these 4 bullets that are listed here, they're part of this morning meeting or this weekly meeting on identifying the right work that needs to be done, what's the correct priority of that work order. Believe it or not every work order is a safety work order. So I've been around the block enough times where operators will understand that if they put a safety tag on that work order, it's got to be done. That's not the case with every single work order that comes in. So what is the true priority of that work order? Okay, so again, I've said it. We cannot expect a world-class maintenance organization that's not supported by a world-class storeroom. So here's a couple things that we see out of there. Too much inventory, not enough inventory, storeroom is always out of stock. When I, as a maintenance technician, lose faith in my storeroom, then that's when I get little secret stashes of materials around. And again, I've been around blocks enough time that just about every single organization I've been in, they have secret stashes of material around the facility. So we need to get that materials back in the storeroom and control it. So when I look at storerooms, I believe there should be 11 outcomes of a world-class storeroom. And notice the first bullet. It doesn't say reduce inventories, minimize inventories, but rather I wrote optimize the inventories. I have to have a high level of inventory accuracy because I need planners, I need maintenance group, I need everybody that uses the storeroom to have a high level of confidence that what they see in the computer system is exactly what we have. So I used to joke around my staff that there was only 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and cycle counts. So we will do cycle counts to assure our inventory accuracy. So you can read down through the rest of those: the min-max levels, standard operating procedures, reduce search times because I need to find parts, so I got right locations in the system. And the last one, I got supplier agreements put in place. So I believe there are 15 fundamental or tactical processes that we need to have in a storeroom. So I'm just going to go through and just give you some of the highlights of what some of those elements would consist of in these processes. So the first one is, how do we get new parts in the system? So I have some standardized form that we use. The part description is based on some standardized format and some nomenclature. Everything begins with a noun. There's a modifier, further description. So that's how we get new items in our CMMS system. And by the way, that's severely limited on who has access to the item masters. The best organizations out there, one person has access to add parts to the system. You may have a backup, but only one person is allowed to go in and add new items because that one person is going to assure all those bullets in that first process. The second one is we need to classify the inventories, ABC classifications. I throw another bogey in there. I throw a D classification in there. Those D classification items are my critical spares. So for some of you out there that are determining or calculating inventory turns, I do not take the value of critical spares into my calculation. And the reason being is you don't want to use your critical spares. So why penalize yourself if you're not using your critical spares? There's my cycle count right there. I prefer daily rather than weekly, monthly. Cycle counting, a daily cycle count is different than an annual physical inventory, which is a key concept there. If I do find a count discrepancy, there's only 2 reasons why your inventories are off. Either the process failed or someone failed to follow the process. 99.9% of the times is because people failed to follow the process. So I need to understand why. There's my obsolescence. It's going to be reviewed by a cross-functional team. So purchasing, operations, maintenance, engineers, storeroom personnel are part of that team that truly identify obsolete materials. We're going to talk a little bit more about kitting, but it ensures that the parts are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My purchasing group, they help determine the correct inventory levels strategically. They could put certain things in place, for instance, VMI programs, consignment programs, vending machines, just for a few examples. There's only 2 types of work out there, planned and unplanned. So when we are in an unplanned work situation, how do I get materials out of the storeroom? That's my requisition of materials process. And my receiving, I got one designated area. I don't have the back door. I don't have multiple receiving docks. I don't bring parts in through the reception area. I don't bring parts in through a maintenance technician's back pocket. One area only, so I can do the proper documentation. All parts are issued out to work orders. An interesting question that perhaps I should have asked, but what does MRO stand for? That stands for materials, maintenance, repair, and operation. So if it doesn't fall under one of those 3 categories, it does not belong in a storeroom. So anything that is associated with an asset, all those parts are issued out appropriately. What's your process for repair or replace? Again, there's a designated area that we drop those items. Materials layup program, that is scheduled PM on maintaining the components or the spares inventory, rotating shafts, assuring rotation of bearings, making sure that we practice a FIFO, first in, first out issuing process, all in the name of preserving and maintaining the assets that we have in the storeroom. Some organizations, if they're big enough, they have what's called a delivery process. So we have a designated area, we deliver those staged kits. There's a return to supplier, there's a return to stock. And the best of the best organizations out there, they have a less than 2% of their total POs that they place are overnighted or in an emergency status. So once we get the basics, the blocking and tackling done, if you will, in the storeroom, I can move on to some strategic practices. And there's 9 of those that I consider. We can start introducing our reorder points, our economic order quantities, or for my Maximo users, our order on request. Okay, those are our one-offs. What are the right min-max levels? All in the name of assuring that we get the right parts at the right time. We have to establish a monthly budget for the storeroom. And I really like to see organizations standardize their parts for the 2 reasons that are there. But if nothing else, I want to make sure that the parts I have are standardized so my maintenance technicians know how to repair them. My critical spares cannot be based on emotions. It's got to be based on some type of criteria, whether that's a formalized failure modes and effects analysis or whether we use a reliability-centered maintenance analysis. But I need to identify clearly what my critical spares are. We have to have a process in place for the elimination of hazmat materials. And when we do have obsolescence, how do we get something out of nothing? So what's our process, what's our practice to get salvage value back within the organization? Vendor managed inventory, again, I started today's conversation with the tactical dollars that we need to keep in our storeroom. Now, once we establish the tactical value of the storeroom, how do we strategically manage that? Now we can start introducing vendor managed inventories, consignments, again, vending machines, which I'm pretty big on. And then the next one, data scrubbing. How do we clean up the system? Too many companies go over, for instance, and purchase or go live with SAP, but they don't have time to go up and clean the data first. What I'll hear very often is, look, let's get SAP in here. Let's just do a legacy dump the material, all the information over in SAP, and then after we go live, we'll go back and clean it up. Well, guess what? That day never comes. And then there's my problem-solving process or practices. Where the recurring failure is coming from? Is it a design process failure? Is it a spare part because we're not buying the right parts to the right specification? But somebody needs to be looking at that constantly. All right, there's 2 things that I told you that we can increase our our maintenance technicians' efficiency by 50%. Plan their work and kit their work. So kitting right here is getting all the materials for that corrective maintenance work order, or PM is another example, into a kit. And we make sure that those kits are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Here's just a couple different examples of what some of those kits may look like. The acro box in the lower left-hand corner, that's probably my preferred way because we could seal those kits. You can see one of those examples right there. It is sealed with the tie wrap. There's the work order. It's in a nice little package right in front. The work order 159679, so the maintenance technician can identify it and take it. But the nice part about that is the only way to get into that kit is to cut the tie wrap. There's a couple more examples of some kitting. Those 2 boxes right there are PM kits. So the last pop quiz right here, there are 2 activities that can improve wrench time by 50% or greater. What are they?
Okay, so we're going to launch that poll and tell us what you believe the 2 activities that can improve wrench time by 50% or more. supervision and longer breaks, planning and meetings, scheduling and kitting, or planning and kitting. All right, so we're getting on the hour. We're just going to leave this open a few more seconds. So if you want to cast your votes. Okay, about 10 more seconds. So we've got about 2/3 of the votes in. So improving wrench time by 50% or greater. Cast your vote. Okay, let's go ahead and share the results, Andy. So we had, no one said supervision and longer breaks. 11% felt that planning and meetings could improve wrench time by 50%. 38% felt scheduling and kitting, and 51% felt planning and kitting could improve wrench time by 50% or more.
Okay.
Back to you.
Very good. The answer on that then would be planning their work and kitting the maintenance technicians' work. All right. So to wrap it up for the summary, I can't stress enough how important it is that we have more cross-functional activities, maintenance and operations working together, having morning meetings to establish priorities, maintenance planners working with the storeroom operation to review min-max levels, the right parts are in there, putting kits together, and writing good job plans for the maintenance technicians, and organizations moving away from trying to reduce their inventories to moving more towards what is the optimal inventory levels and how do we maintain that optimal level. All right. Donna?
Okay, we have a couple more minutes before the hour, so I'm going to try to get a couple of questions in. Andy, someone did ask, one of the newer metrics is absorption rate. And how important do you believe this rate is in improving your maintenance costs? You have a view on that?
Well, yeah, there's a couple different ways to answer that. One of the best metrics I've seen as far as the absorption rate is what's the total cost. It's going to, my answer is going to be dependent is that you're producing a part, that you're producing a widget. So I've seen many metrics out there that are taking into account the absorption rate, and what they're looking at is what is the contributing how do I want to say this? What is the contributing dollars that maintenance is putting into their cost of goods sold, and how much is maintenance contributing into the COGS? So you can measure that. So for every widget you produce, what percentage of that can be attributed back to the maintenance costs, and from there we can look at the absorption rates.
Okay, and do you feel that's an important measure?
I do. I want to know, as a manager, as part of the leadership team, I want to know what is the recipe, if you will, that's making up my cost of goods sold, and you would be amazed. I mean, for example, 50 to 60% of cost of goods sold is made up of materials. So yeah. The majority is made up of materials, not labor, which is where a lot of people think it is.
Interesting. All right, I'm going to have time for one more here. And for an organization that doesn't today have proper planning, kitting, or schedule, what's a good starting point, Andy?
That's a great question. The easiest jobs to start planning are PMs.
Okay. Very good, yeah. Start with the OEM recommendations.
Yes, start with the OEM recommendations. Get your preventive maintenance routes down, whether that's your daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual. So, but your PM programs, I might strongly recommend to start with those.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Andy. This was really a highly information-packed session, and we really do appreciate you putting it together. We are at the top of the hour here, so I'd like to thank Andy Gager of Lifecycle Engineering, and for all of you who attended today. And based on some of your recommendations, Andy, I think we're going to be doing maybe an upcoming X3 workshop on how to put together bills of materials and help people to implement some of the recommendations that you suggested, because they're excellent. Again, for those of you that were asking, Andy has agreed to share a PDF of this presentation with everyone who attended today, and we'll also follow up and share a copy of the recording. And again, Andy has shared his yes, so for those of you who are asking, yes, we will be sharing the presentation. Andy's group will be doing that. We'll share the recording, and Andy's contact information is here for those of you who'd like to continue the dialogue. So again, Andy, thank you so much on behalf of everyone who's attended today, and we hope you'll come back and speak with us again, and best of luck in your upcoming travels.
Thank you very much, Ron. I appreciate the time.